And joining us right now is Dr. Ben Carson. Of course, he needs no introduction, Republican presidential candidate and author of a brand new book. It's called A More Perfect Union. And welcome, Dr. Carson.
Well, thank you. Good to be back.
Congratulations on everything that you have accomplished to this point. I am proud to know you, and I got to tell you, I am thrilled for you. You must be very pleased with where you are at this point.
Well, it has been quite an adventure, but it's not totally surprising in the sense that all my life I've had people saying, "You can't do this. This is impossible." And I don't even get started until I hear those words.
Well, you know, the book, A Perfect Union, which was co-written along with your lovely wife, yes, talks about the Constitution and yes, getting our liberty back. But one thing that struck me, you talk about Abraham Lincoln, talking about saying that who should really have input into this country. And one of the people he mentioned were, along with other lay people, lay being not politicians, were doctors. Yes. So how apropos that you would talk about that in your book, and here you are.
Well, you know, doctors, scientists, engineers really have been trained to make decisions based on evidence as opposed to ideology. And if there's anything we need right now, it's some evidence-based decision making.
Well, let's talk about evidence-based decision making. I want you to hear what President Obama did. I mean, hours after the shooting in Oregon, yes, before we knew too much. But here's what he said.
And of course, what's also routine is that somebody somewhere will comment and say, Obama politicized this issue. Well, this is something we should politicize. 1-5. It is relevant to our common life together, to the body politic.
Now, he also went on to say at the press conference the day after, become a one-issue voter. If the politician you're talking about or thinking about is not for gun control, then don't vote for him, no matter what. I mean, is this exploitation in your view? He said he's politicizing it, so he's admitting it.
Well, you know, hopefully, I personally believe people are smarter than that. I believe he's miscalculating the level of intelligence of the people. I see it all over the place. People are waking up. They're not listening to the silliness that's coming from the established political group or from the pundits, quite frankly. They're analyzing on their own, and that's a good thing, and I believe that that's what's going to save our country.
But, you know, of course, he hasn't come forth with one specific law, background checks wouldn't do it, that would have stopped the mass shootings that they're talking about.
Nor will he come up with one, because there isn't. You know, this is not an issue of the gun. This is an issue of the gunman. And we need to start looking at what are the characteristics of these people. I think we can probably, if we sit down and study this thing scientifically, begin to identify the kinds of personalities that are likely to be involved in this, and we can begin to intervene early, not only to save the lives of masses of people, but of those individuals as well.
All right. Now, also, President Obama, you know, did not mention, and he had to know at that point because we found out an hour later, and he's President of the United States. And still, as of right now that you and I are talking, hasn't mentioned that this shooter said, "Are you Christian?" Right, and then shot them in the head. If they said no, he shot them in the leg. How is that possible from a devout Christian or from any American president? And what would have happened if the shooter said, "Are you Muslim?" and shot them in the head?
Well, remember, he's been very reticent to mention Christians in the Middle East who are being massacred as well. I'm not sure why he has so much trouble actually articulating the words. It does make you wonder a little bit.
Well, I mean, what's the reason? There's got to be a reason. Would he have said, would he have talked about it if it were Muslims?
Oh my gosh, it would have been, he would have had a seizure over it. And I'm not exactly sure how he thinks that people aren't noticing this. But the important thing, once again, is we don't have to deal with him that much longer, hopefully. And if we can manage to get through this and begin to enact some logical solutions, I think we can come out of this pretty quickly.
Do you believe that he would love to take people's handguns away, ban handguns, and confiscate them?
I think he probably would like to do that. But we're not going to let that happen. I mean, the Second Amendment is so crucial. And, you know, I wrote about it pretty extensively in this new book. you know, it was Daniel Webster who said America would never experience tyranny because the people are armed.
Let me take to Hillary for a second. And another thing you write about in your book, A Perfect Union, is executive orders. And of course, we've seen Obama and what he's done. Hillary has just announced that one of the things she would do to help control gun violence is use her executive orders. Isn't that refreshing?
It's refreshing. But I'll say it again, I really don't think Hillary's going to be the nominee.
Then why not?
Because I think even the Democrats are smart enough to realize that that would be a disaster for them.
And do you think, I mean, do you see Bernie Sanders? Do you think it's going to be Sanders, or do you think Biden gets in, it's Biden?
I believe Biden will get in. If they're logical in any sense, I think that would probably be what they would do.
And see, he's missed the debate, the next debate on CNN that they're going to have, or the first debate, but not too late for him?
No, not by any stretch of the it would be under normal circumstances, but under these circumstances, he'll be welcome with open arms.
I want to skip ahead to cut 12 in the control room if we can. This is what Joe Biden said at the at LBGT affair over the weekend. Here it is.
The American people are already with you. Look at the numbers. There's homophobes still left. Most of them are running for president, I think.
How do you react to something like that from the Vice President of the United States?
Well, you know, they're exposing themselves for what they are. And it'll be very nice because this election will be one of the most clear-cut elections in the history of America. Which kind of country are we? Are we one that is up for and by the people, or up for and by the government? It's not going to ever get more crystal clear than
When
this.
you say he's exposing himself for what he is, what is he? What are they?
He's a big government liberal, progressive, who believes that the government knows best.
Joe Biden, when he was running in 08, first of all, he got kicked out of one presidential race for plagiarism. That was a while ago. When he was running for president the last time around against Obama, called him the first clean, articulate African-American ever to run. He also told the editorial board of the New York Post that education's better in Iowa than in D.C. because look at how many minorities you have in Iowa, like 2% compared to D.C. And he also made that Dunkin' Donuts, you can't go into Dunkin' Donuts. Right. By the media's standards and the way they treat you and Republicans, wouldn't he be branded a racist if he were a Republican?
Oh, yeah, it's by the media standards. You know, they would have tarred and feathered him already. But it's okay because, you know, it's going to all come out in the wash. And when we are able to be face-to-face in a debate and have an intelligent conversation, at least on one side, I think it will become very apparent to the people.
If you're debating Joe Biden, if you get the nomination, he gets the nomination, would you bring up what I just said to you?
Under the appropriate circumstances, definitely.
All right, let me ask you one more question about, you talk about America, you talk about America in your book. Are we is there a rising tide of anti-Christian sentiment in this country?
I believe there is. And I don't think most people, if they really stopped and thought about it, would say I'm anti-Christian, but they buy into the PC methodology, and hence they find themselves going with that crowd. I believe that the Congress has a real opportunity now, with the recent ruling on gay marriage, to come out with some legislation that protects the First Amendment rights of the American people.
But Congress, why do so many people, elected officials, believe that if the Supreme Court says it, that's it? It's done. Even, you know, John Kasich, some of your opponents have said, well, the Supreme Court said we have to respect it. They don't, and Kasich has been in Congress, I'm not picking on him, sure. But people around the country believe it's the law of the land when the Supreme Court says it, but Congress has a role to play, as you just alluded to.
They do. And I'm not an anarchist. It is the law of the land, but that doesn't mean we can't change it. It doesn't mean that there isn't a reason that we have separation of powers and you know, checks and balances. And clearly, when one branch oversteps their boundaries, it's time for the next one to act.
Absolutely. Let me move on to the Middle East for a second here. We know we have news today that Russia has ground troops all over the place, tanks all over the place. We know what they did. We know how, I won't put words in your mouth, well, we know what Putin did. On Friday, Obama came out at his press conference and said, Russia and Iran, they're just doing the same thing they were like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. It's just more overt. Overt? They're bombing our allies. They did it without asking. They said, you better watch out. How would you describe what Russia is doing and how Obama has, how it happened?
Well, you know, Vladimir Putin has expansionist ideals. He wants to really to reestablish a worldwide Soviet influence, and he was very unhappy with the dissolution. And now he's looking for weakness. And what we need to do is demonstrate that there is no weakness there. You know, we need to stand our ground with the airspace. You know, I would establish a no-fly zone along the border with Turkey. In no way would I back off. I would also face him in other parts of the world. You know, the whole Baltic region, you know, and Eastern Europe. I reestablish the missile defense system. I would have more than 1 or 2 armored brigades there. I would face him down. I would give weapons to Ukraine, offensive weapons, because, you know, they gave up their nuclear weapons with the thought that we would back them up. I would be arming the Kurds directly.
They've been begging for months.
Absolutely. I mean, why are we just like sitting back and only reacting when somebody does something? You can't do that in the kind of world that we live in.
Some people say, though, I mean, some people are applauding that Putin is taking on a role as far as like hitting ISIS targets, which apparently he did hit some ISIS targets, and he's done more, maybe some say, to destroy ISIS infrastructure in Syria in a day or two than we've done in all these months.
Possibly so, but recognize that there's a bigger picture. You know, Vladimir Putin has been friends with Ali Khamenei since the time when Khomeini was in Russia as a student at Patrice Lumumba University, graduating in 1968, Mahmoud Abbas being one of his other classmates. These are deep, complex relationships, and they're not going anywhere. And we have to really understand what's going on that, and we have to have a policy of leading, of being proactive and not just reacting to what people are doing, because we will always be behind the 8 ball.
And again, you know, the Christians that have been slaughtered, you alluded to this earlier, by ISIS, and again, an administration that just, I say this on the air all the time, the recent terror attack in Jerusalem, I've heard nothing from the administration. When 5 rabbis were slaughtered in a Jerusalem synagogue, I heard, it was like, well, no. I don't think he's moved by dead Christians or dead Jews. I think he's moved by dead Muslims and dead thugs at the hands of police.
Well, you know, the sad thing is that a lot of people are buying into his way of thinking, and I think it's very dangerous. We need to understand that America is a unique place. You can have an American dream, but is there a dream for any other place? I don't think so. And we shouldn't be so anxious to give it up and to give up all our values and principles for the sake of political correctness.
I want you to hear Bibi Netanyahu, who spoke. This was after the latest terrorist attack in Jerusalem. It's 18. Let's watch this.
We just had, you know, a young mother and a young father brutally murdered by Palestinian terrorists, 4 little orphans in the back of the car. And President Abbas has yet to denounce this. I mean, on the rare occasions that we have, and we do have on certain occasions, acts of terrorism by Jews, we all go there like gangbusters. We condemn it. We do everything we can to fight them and to fight them. I expect President Abbas to do the same. So one is, you have to stop this incitement against Israel, because incitement leads to acts of terrorism. But the second thing is, you've got to stay in the process. You've got to come and sit on the table.
You have that. You have Netanyahu saying we're in a fight to the death with the Palestinians, and Abbas at the UN went there and said, Oslo Accords, no more. Have you heard this administration even react?
Well, they haven't.
How is that possible?
Oh, don't ask me. I will never be able to defend them or explain what they do.
I mean, if Israel sneezes wrong or builds a settlement, there's a press conference with the president or his spokesman. He said, no more Oslo Accords. Yeah. Shrug.
Well, you know, I was in Israel last December. Couldn't find a single person who didn't believe that we had turned our backs on them. And, you know, if we will turn our backs on Israel, if we will renege on Ukraine, how can we expect the rest of the world and our other allies to have any confidence in us? Absolutely. And how can we expect them to get behind us when we call for a coalition or anything else?
All right, let's turn to the race. And I want you to hear something that Donald Trump said. This is 15.
I'm not a masochist. And if I was dropping in the polls where I saw that I wasn't going to win, Why would I continue? And it's funny, maybe it's like not like me because it's the power of positive thinking. I'm a very positive person, I'm a positive thinker, but the truth is, I'm a realist. If I were doing poorly, if I saw myself going down, if you would stop calling me because you no longer have any interest in Trump because he has no chance, I go back to my business. I have no problem with it.
Is he giving himself, because he said it on Meet the Press, he said it CNBC on Friday, he said, is he giving himself an out, do you think?
No, I think he actually is talking about some of the others who are in the race who are, polling at 0% and 1%.
Sending a message?
2%. He's trying to say, guys, come on now. I think that's what he's saying.
Interesting.
But, I think that's a very noble thing for him to do.
Trump's health plan, or compared to your health plan, he likes the single payer. I think he at one point said that. He said that the single payer, the single payer system that Canada and Britain have. I don't know if he said he liked it or he didn't. Let me see what I got here. Well, let me ask you. You're a doctor. Yeah. You should know better than anybody what it would take. I'm a hypochondriac, so I see doctors a lot. And they're always complaining, this is killing us. And the paperwork is unbelievable. And I went to a cardiologist the other day, a friend of mine, and he said, when I came out of medical school, here's what we were making. He said, you know what I'm making now for your visit? $60 or something. This is not sustainable, is it?
It really isn't. And, there are much better ways to do it. When we take something as important as your health care and make it into a political football, this is what we get. Why don't we solve the problem? What do you need for good health care? A patient and a healthcare provider. Along comes the middleman to facilitate the relationship. Now it's become the dominant factor with the patient and the healthcare provider at its beck and call. And what I've provided, the system that I've provided, puts patients and healthcare providers back at the center and limits the influence of outsiders. And it will make all the difference in the world, will cost less money, and will be much more efficient.
And of course, the employer mandate kicks in after the 2016 election, because that's another executive order, or Obama just unilaterally decided to postpone it. That's going to hit 80 million people.
It's incredible. It used to be when you started a business, you called your mom and you said you were so proud. Mom, I got a new business, 10 employees, then 20, then 30, then 40. Oh, better stop. Don't want to hit that 50. Yep. That's the very backbone of America, small business, and we have policies in place that are destroying that. What are we trying to do?
Okay, Donald Trump has said that if he wins, he would offer you a job in his cabinet or his administration. He didn't say vice president on the ticket. How do you feel about Donald Trump? And if you were the nominee, would you consider Donald Trump as a VP? And if not, would you consider offering him a position of some sort in your administration?
Well, I think Donald Trump is a very talented individual. He certainly knows how to take advantage of situations. There's no question about that. And I believe he could bring some wisdom somewhere along the line. I think there would be room for him somewhere.
In your administration?
Absolutely.
But not on your ticket?
I think there'd be room somewhere.
Okay. Could you see yourself being the boss to Donald Trump?
Maybe as an advisor.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Now, Jeb Bush, you talked about Trump sending a message to people with 0%, 1.1%, whatever. But Jeb Bush is floundering around at 4%. He raises all kinds of money, and congratulations on raising $20 million last month. That was amazing. And small donations. I want to talk about that. But do you think Bush at some point should start thinking about getting out of the race as well?
I seriously doubt that he would give that consideration. But I think everybody should ask themselves, what are they doing, and why are they doing it? I can easily answer the question. I'm doing it because the people asked me to do it, and the people are funding the effort. So they didn't just talk and then go home and sit down.
But why? And by the way, there was a Saturday Night Live skit on Santorum and a couple of others that they shouldn't run. Like, what am I doing? They were delusional. Oh, it's a funny skit. Although I love Rick Santorum. What about Bush? Why is he not resonating? Why does he have 4% with all that money and the Bush name, good or bad? But nonetheless, why?
This is a bad time to be identified as part of the political establishment. I think Jeb Bush is a very nice man. I like him. But this is just not the right time to be named Bush or Clinton.
Carly Fiorina, she's third, you're second. If Donald Trump left and it became Carson and Carly, kind of, or whatever, however you want to phrase it, why should people choose you over her?
Well, I think that's the decision that they would have to make. They would have to listen carefully to what we had to say and determine what kind of people we were and which kind of leader they would like to have.
Who might you feel comfortable with or most comfortable with in the current field as your VP? I mean, have you given any thought to that whatsoever?
It may well be someone from outside the current field. I don't know. What I would be looking for...
If it had to be one of them, who do you like the most? I mean,
Well,
who are you more comfortable with? Close to your views, nice guy, but whatever you use to judge.
I just am not ready to say at this stage.
Okay. Any criticism of you from your opponents, especially Trump again, is that you're a nice guy, but you're a doctor, that you don't have the temperament, that you've never negotiated a deal like he has, etc. How do you answer to that?
I would say I've done a lot more things than he thinks I've done.
Such as?
Figure out how to do things in medicine that have never been done before. Started a national nonprofit, 9 of 10 of which fail. Ours is not only thriving in all 50 states, but has won major national awards that are only given to one philanthropic organization out of tens of thousands. Done that twice. And, have, served on corporate boards, Kellogg for 18 years, Costco for 16 years, Vaccinogen as the chairman of the board. Been involved in multitudinous things. Everybody seems to think that whatever they do is the thing that allows you to do everything. That's not what it is. What we need is somebody who knows how to solve problems. And if he or anybody wants to sit down with me and talk about who has solved a lot of very complex problems that perhaps have never been solved before in their field, let's talk about that.
Not to mention separating conjoined twins at the head, which it just blows me away. You'd have to deal with the Speaker of the House, whoever he or she may be, if you were President of the United States. Boehner is leaving. How do you feel about that, and who would you like to see? I know McCarthy is kind of the front runner, but he put his foot in his mouth with Benghazi and the committee, and Hillary's capitalizing on that. Who would you like to see as Speaker of the House right now?
Well, I would like to see an open process, almost like a real campaign, where people get out there, talk about their vision for America, so that we can actually see what it is that they believe and what are they willing to do. Let's not just blindly go through this process or say who is due next and put them up there. This is such an important time in our country.
Are you happy with the leadership as it's been in the House and the Senate, but Boehner and McConnell?
Well, the good thing is that everything moves along. And, it's time to move on.
But, okay, so would you like to see McConnell follow Boehner out the door?
I think it would not be an inappropriate thing to change leadership from time to time.
Even though he just became the majority leader with the election victory last November?
Well, that I believe that the leader should be somebody that the followers want to follow. And it seems to me like a logical thing to do is to ask them.
Then who would you like to see? You have anybody in mind that you'd like to see as majority leader?
I would like to see somebody that the Senate will follow along with enthusiasm.
Okay, and be more of a conservative leader as well?
I think we need a more conservative leader because the people over the last few elections have sent a number of people to Washington with the thought that things would change.
The premise was that, yeah.
And they haven't seen that happen. That's one of the reasons they're so frustrated. That's why people like myself are doing well.
Okay, so President Carson, you're sworn in, you got your cabinet. What's one of the two first things you would tackle?
Well, first of all, I am very concerned about the weakness of our military. Our Navy is at its smallest level since 1917, the Air Force since 1940. We're losing personnel like crazy. Our generals are retiring. Our veterans are killing themselves at a rate of 22 to 23 a week. We have to shore up our military. If we don't get our military right, nothing else matters. And we've got to start working immediately upon our fiscal situation. It's a house of cards. It's about to collapse. The only reason we can sustain the level of debt we have is because we're the reserve currency of the world. We can print money, which we're doing in a very irresponsible way, which is just accelerating our demise. And, you know, when people come around talking about free college, I mean, that is the most absurd thing when we are on the brink of collapse financially. It's craziness.
Yeah. Finally, Syrian refugees, quote unquote refugees. The administration has raised the bar. We're going to let 100,000 in, whatever. What would you do? What would you propose?
I would propose that we use our brains and be somewhat commonsensical. I mean, if you're going to bring in people from a place where there are a lot of jihadists who are interested in destroying us and they see an easy mechanism to infiltrate, why on earth would you do something like that? Particularly given the fact that we have tens of millions of people already in our country who are in need of our help. You know, when you get on an airplane, they say in case of an emergency, your oxygen mask will drop down, put yours on first, and then administer help to your neighbor. Okay, we need oxygen.
Great analogy. Doctor, congratulations on your success and the book, A More Perfect Union, by the great Ben Carson and his lovely wife, and I urge you all to read it and learn all you can about the Constitution, what we need to do to make a more perfect union. Thank you, sir. Great to see you.
Thank you. Always good to be with you.
Okay.
Stand by.
I'm sorry.
Stand by.
Sure. I thought, okay, yeah. Okay, ready? Rolling? You still rolling?
Keep rolling.
Okay. Get the camera ready as soon as you leave, though, because okay. All right, we're rolling. We're rolling.
Stand by.
Okay.
Wait. What do you need on screen?
Okay. So tell me, what will people get out of the book, A More Perfect Union, when they read it?
Well, everybody knows that we have a Constitution, but very few people know what's in it and why it's there. When they get through reading this book, they'll know what's in it and why it's there.
Well, a lot of people, you're right, the lack of education, you're very big on education, it's made you the man you are today, and it is a shame, but one thing that people will come away with, I know you talk about so many things in the book, but if you had to pick one or two things that people will really gain out of it specifically, what would you say that is?
I think people will come away with a full understanding of how the executive branch is supposed to work as opposed to what's been happening lately, and a very good understanding of what the real powers of the legislative branch are, which they are not manifesting right now, and they need to, including judicial oversight.
Might people find out that, might they say, uh-oh, when they read your book, if they realize what you just alluded to?
Some of them might. I'd like to see a lot of the people in Washington read it too.
And this is good for young adults too.
It will be, if you read this book, you will know a lot.
Congratulations.
All right,
Thank you, sir.